The knock in the dark? The night was silent, so silent that even the sound of the old clock on the wall felt loud inside the small wooden house. Daniel, a human who lived alone near the forest, was sitting by the fire. He liked the quiet. He liked the peace, but sometimes the silence felt too heavy, almost like the forest itself was watching him. The wind outside pressed against the windows, but apart from that there was nothing, only darkness. Then suddenly, he heard it. Knock. Knock, knock. It was soft at first, like someone was testing if anyone lived inside. Daniel froze. At this hour, no one ever came to his door. He looked at the clock, past midnight. His first thought was that maybe it was the wind, but the sound was too sharp, too real. Another knock followed, louder this time. Daniel's heart beat faster. He stood up slowly, his hand brushing against the wooden table where his hunting knife rested. The forest was dangerous, but this was different. He felt something strange, something out of place. He walked to the door and placed his ear against the wood. Silence. Taking a breath, he opened the door. What he saw made him step back. There, standing in the pale light of the moon, was a woman. But not just any woman. Her skin glowed faintly, almost silver under the night. Her eyes were large, bright, and carried a fear that pierced into him. She wore nothing but a torn cloth, barely covering her trembling body. Her hair was wet with dew, sticking to her shoulders, and her bare feet were bruised and dirty. For a moment, Daniel could not speak. His mind tried to find answers. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she like this? But no human looked like that. No human's eyes glowed in the dark. Please. Her voice was weak, broken, yet strangely soft. Please, let me in. Daniel's hand tightened on the knife. His instincts told him to be careful, but his heart told him she was not a threat. She looked desperate, lost, and close to collapsing. Who are you? He asked carefully. She shivered, looking over her shoulder into the forest as if something terrible was chasing her. No time, they are coming. Before he could ask more, she stumbled forward, almost falling against the doorframe. Her skin was cold to the touch when Daniel caught her. He could feel how weak she was. She was shaking not only from the cold but from fear, against his better judgment. He pulled her inside and shut the door. The firelight revealed more. Strange marks across her arms, glowing faintly like patterns of light under her skin. The torn cloth was the only thing keeping her modesty, but it was ripped in many places, showing bruises and scratches. Daniel placed her carefully on a chair near the fire. She closed her eyes, breathing heavy, her chest rising and falling. Daniel did not know what to do. Should he ask her questions? Should he throw her out? She was not human. He was sure of that now. But she looked broken, fragile, and hunted. What are you? He whispered, almost to himself. Her eyes opened slowly, locking onto his. Human, she said, as if tasting the word for the first time. You are human? Daniel froze. The way she said it, it was like she had seen something impossible. You know about humans? He asked, confused. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak again, but before she could answer, a sound outside cut through the silence. Crunch, crunch, footsteps. Daniel turned his head sharply toward the window. The forest was too dark to see, but he knew what he heard. Someone or something was moving out there. The woman's eyes widened in terror, and she gripped his arm with surprising strength. They found me, she whispered. Daniel's pulse raced. He didn't understand what was happening, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary night. The knock on his door had brought a stranger, an alien woman, into his life, and with her, danger had followed. He slowly reached for the knife again. Who's out there? Her answer was a whisper filled with dread. Hunters. The fire cracked louder in the silence. The woman's trembling form in his chair, the footsteps outside, and the weight of the night all pressed against him. For the first time in years, Daniel realized that his quiet life was gone. Something bigger, darker, had come knocking at his door, and it was only the beginning. Shelter of fear. Daniel shut the curtains quickly, his hand shaking as he pressed the cloth tighter against the window. The sound of footsteps outside had stopped, but he knew something or someone was still out there. His knife was firm in his hand, yet his eyes kept going back to the strange woman now sitting near the fire. Her body trembled as the flames threw shadows across her silver-like skin. She pulled the torn cloth around herself, but it did little to hide her bruises or the glowing marks that ran across her arms, like faint lines of light. Every time the fire flickered, the markings pulsed like veins of energy beneath her skin. Daniel cleared his throat, trying to stay calm. "Who are you? What do they want from you?" The woman looked at him, fear still in her eyes. "I cannot say much. If they hear my name, they will find me faster. Your walls." She glanced around the small wooden house, the shelves filled with books, the old table, the hunting tools hanging on the wall. "They are thin, not safe." Her words were soft, but the way she spoke carried a weight that Daniel did not understand. He had dealt with bandits, with wild animals, even with the cold winters, but never with something like this. Never with someone not from this world. He moved closer, lowering the knife but not putting it down. "If you want me to help you, I need to know the truth. What are you running from?" She hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the chair until her knuckles turned pale. Then she whispered, "Hunters. They do not stop. Once they mark someone, they chase until death. They do not forgive." Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. The way she said it was not the way a normal person talked about danger. It was not just fear. It was final, hopeless, like a hunted animal speaking of its predator. He pulled another chair closer to the fire, sat down across from her, and studied her face. She was beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Her large eyes reflected the firelight, filled with both exhaustion and strength. Yet, under that torn cloth and her glowing marks, he saw only one thing: someone who was running for her life. "You're safe here for now," he said finally, his voice firm. "This is my home. No one comes here without going through me." Her lips trembled, almost like she wanted to smile but could not. "Humans," she whispered again, as though it was a word she had not spoken in years. "They told us humans were gone. Lost in war, in fire. But here you are," Daniel frowned. "Gone, what do you mean? Humans are everywhere." Her head shook weakly. "Not out there. Not beyond your small world. Beyond the stars." The room fell silent. The fire crackled and Daniel's mind spun. She was not just running from people in the forest. She was running from something far bigger, something tied to a world beyond his own. Before he could ask more, a faint howl echoed through the trees. Low, long, and unnatural. It was not a wolf. It was not any animal he had ever heard before. The woman stiffened, clutching the chair tightly. "They are close," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They hunt with sound. They smell fear." Daniel stood, moving quickly to the door and locking it tight. His hand pressed against the wood, as though his strength could keep whatever was outside from breaking through. He turned back to her. "If they're after you, why come here? Why my door?" Her eyes met his, wide and glistening with tears she tried to hide. "I was told, if ever lost, if ever dying, find a human. Only a human would open the door." Daniel froze, her words echoing in his chest. He wanted to ask who told her that, but her exhaustion caught up with her. Her body sagged forward, and he quickly moved to catch her before she fell. She was burning with fever, her skin cold but her breath hot and uneven. He carried her carefully to the old bed in the corner, laying her down gently. She clutched his sleeve for a moment, her grip strong despite her weakness. "Don't let them take me." "I won't," Daniel said quietly. For a long time he sat beside her, listening to her breathing steady as she drifted into uneasy sleep. Outside, the forest whispered with strange noises, branches snapping, faint growls, the sound of something circling. Daniel sharpened his knife slowly, his eyes never leaving the door. He knew danger was near, but he also knew one thing for certain. He could not turn her away now. As the night grew darker, the weight of his choice settled on him. By letting her inside, he had crossed a line he could never step back from. And somewhere beyond the door, hidden in the shadows of the forest, the hunters waited. The first truth. The night stretched on, long and heavy, with only the fire to keep the shadows away. Daniel sat near the door, his knife in one hand and his rifle resting across his knees. Sleep refused to come, though his body begged for it. Every sound outside, the rustle of branches, the distant crunch of snow, even the hoot of an owl, felt sharper, heavier. Behind him, on the small bed, the alien woman stirred in her restless sleep. Her breath came in uneven bursts, and sometimes her lips moved as though whispering words in a language Daniel did not know. Every time she shifted, the glowing marks on her arms flickered faintly, pulsing like veins filled with light. Just before dawn, she woke. Her eyes opened wide, scanning the room in alarm until they found Daniel's calm figure near the door. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, but when she saw him still watching over her, some of the tension in her body eased. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice weak but clearer than before. Daniel nodded. "You knocked on my door. That means you're under my roof now. I protect what's mine." Her gaze softened, though fear still lingered. She sat up slowly, wrapping the torn cloth around herself more tightly as if suddenly aware of how exposed she was. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. "You don't understand. By helping me, you've already marked yourself. They will come for you, too." Daniel leaned forward. "Then tell me why. Tell me who you are and what these hunters want. If I'm already involved, I need the truth." For a long time, she was silent. Her trembling hands pulled the cloth tighter, her eyes darting toward the windows as though she feared someone was listening even now. Finally, she drew in a deep breath. "My name is Sira," she said. The sound of it was strange, soft, but carried weight. "I come from far beyond your skies. My people, they are not like you. They follow old laws, old hunts, and I broke those laws." Daniel frowned. "What laws?" She looked into the fire, her face shadowed by its flicker. "Laws that say weakness must be erased. That say anyone who questions the hunt must become the hunted. I stood against them, and for that they hunt me now. The torn cloth I wear, it is their mark of shame. They stripped me of everything and set me loose so their hunters could chase me until I fall." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her hands together as if to steady herself. "I thought I would die in the forest. But then I saw the light of your house. I did not believe it at first. Humans were stories, myths told to scare or inspire children. They said humans burned away in the old wars, that no living human had survived beyond ashes. Yet here you are, opening your door to me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Humans aren't myths. We're still here. We survive." Sira's eyes glistened. "And that is what terrifies them most." Daniel leaned back, processing her words. If she was telling the truth, then beyond the stars, humans were already considered extinct. Yet he was sitting here, alive, breathing, with an alien who thought him impossible. He looked at her glowing marks again. "What about those? Why do you glow like that?" Her expression turned darker. "Because I was chosen once. Before I broke their laws, I was one of the marked. These lines, they show bloodline, strength, and fate. But now they only make me easier to find. Hunters track the glow. They can smell it, taste it, even in the dark." Daniel cursed under his breath. "So bringing you here, I've painted a target on this house." Sira nodded slowly, guilt written across her face. "Yes, and still you let me in." Why? Daniel had no answer ready. He stared into the fire for a long time, then finally spoke. "Because when you knocked, you looked like someone about to break. I've seen people like that before. People who just needed a chance to breathe. I couldn't close the door." For the first time since she entered his home, a true expression flickered across her face. A small, fragile smile. It vanished quickly, replaced by fear when another sound echoed from the forest. This time it wasn't footsteps. It was a horn, low, deep, and filled with menace. The sound rolled across the trees like thunder, making Daniel's chest tighten. Sira stood quickly, her glowing marks pulsing brighter. "They are calling the pack. The hunt begins." Daniel grabbed his rifle, his knife still strapped at his belt. His voice was steady, though his stomach churned. "Then let them come. They'll find I'm not so easy to take." Sira's eyes widened. "You don't understand what they are. You cannot fight them." Daniel looked at her, his eyes cold but calm. "You don't understand humans. When someone comes to my door asking for shelter, I don't give them away. No matter who comes knocking after." For a moment, silence hung between them, filled only by the fire's crackle and the faint echo of the horn outside. Then Sira whispered almost to herself, "Perhaps the stories were true. Perhaps humans are the only ones who fight for more than themselves." Outside, the forest shifted with movement, shadows circling, predators waiting. Inside, Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle, his heart steady now. The truth was out. The hunt had begun and the night was far from over. The hunt begins. The sound of the horn still echoed in Daniel's ears long after it faded into the forest. It was not the kind of sound a man forgot. It was low, ancient, and heavy, like it had been blown for centuries to mark the beginning of death. Sira stood near the fire, her body tense, her glowing marks brighter now as if reacting to the call. Her large eyes stared at the door with pure fear. Daniel noticed her trembling hands, but behind that fear was something else. Knowledge. She knew what was coming. "They will surround us," she whispered. The horn means the circle begins. Once they close it, nothing leaves alive. Daniel checked his rifle, sliding the bolt back and forth to make sure it was ready. He loaded every bullet he had left on the table and strapped the hunting knife to his waist. His movements were calm, practiced. Years of living alone in the forest had taught him how to prepare quickly when danger knocked. But this was no wolf or bandit raid. This was something far worse. How many are we talking about? He asked. Sierra's voice was low. A pack of 6, maybe 7, trained since birth to track and kill, each one strong, fast, and merciless. Daniel let out a breath. He had faced many dangers, but never more than 2 or 3 enemies at once. 7 trained hunters in alien form. It sounded impossible. Still, his jaw tightened. Doesn't matter. If they come, they'll find I don't run. Sierra looked at him, her fear softening just a little at his words. Humans, always so stubborn. He smirked faintly. We call it survival. The forest outside grew louder. Branches snapped and the crunch of snow grew closer. The hunters were moving carefully, circling the cabin. Daniel walked to the shelves and pulled down an old oil lantern and a small bag filled with nails, ropes, and tools. He started setting small traps near the windows, tightening ropes and placing broken glass under the rug near the entrance. Sierra watched him, her lips parting in surprise. You prepare to fight, even knowing you cannot win? Daniel didn't look at her. When death comes to my door, I make sure it bleeds before it takes me. The fire flickered as if agreeing with his words. Suddenly, a heavy thud shook the door. Dust fell from the ceiling. Another thud followed, stronger this time. Someone or something was testing the barrier. Sierra gasped. They found us. Daniel raised his rifle and aimed it at the door. Then they'll wish they hadn't. The third blow rattled the hinges, but then silence fell. Daniel's finger hovered near the trigger. The hunters were smart. They were not breaking in. They were waiting, testing his patience. Then a voice came, deep and guttural, speaking in a language Daniel could not understand. Sierra stiffened. Her glowing marks pulsed as if in answer. What are they saying? Daniel asked without lowering his rifle. Her face turned pale. They are telling me to come out. If I surrender, they will spare you. Daniel laughed coldly. That's a lie. Yes, Sierra admitted. Once I step outside, they will kill us both. They only say this to weaken your will. The voice outside called again, this time louder, followed by laughter that sounded like claws dragging across glass. Then came the howl, long, sharp, and piercing through the forest. Daniel's blood chilled, but his hands stayed steady. The window beside him shattered suddenly, and a dark figure lunged inside. Daniel pulled the trigger without thinking. The rifle cracked like thunder, and the intruder dropped onto the wooden floor with a heavy thud. For a moment, silence followed. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. Daniel's chest rose and fell quickly as he stared at the alien body now lying in front of him. The creature was tall, its skin dark and rough like stone, with sharp ridges running down its face. Its eyes glowed a sickly green, and its mouth stretched open with too many teeth. Even in death, it looked terrifying. Sierra's voice broke the silence. 1 down. 6 more to come. Daniel reloaded quickly, his hands moving faster than his thoughts. Good, let them come one by one, but they didn't. Another crash echoed from the back of the cabin. This time 2 hunters broke in at once. Daniel fired again, the bullet striking one in the chest, but the other leaped forward, claws outstretched. Before it could reach him, Sierra moved. Her glowing marks flared bright and she raised her hand. A wave of light burst from her palm, slamming into the alien and throwing it across the room. It hit the wall with a roar, smoke rising from its body. Daniel blinked in shock. You didn't tell me you could do that. Sierra's face was pale, her body trembling from the effort. It is dangerous. It drains me. I cannot do it often. Daniel raised his rifle again, his voice firm. Then save it for when I need it most. The cabin shook as more footsteps gathered outside. Shadows moved across the windows and claws scratched against the wood. The hunters were no longer testing. They were preparing to strike together. Daniel stood in the center of the room, his rifle steady, his knife ready. Sierra stood beside him, her glowing marks still faintly burning in the dark. The horn sounded again, closer this time. The hunt had truly begun. A night of secrets. The cabin was quiet again, but it was not the kind of quiet that brought peace. It was the heavy silence that followed blood and fear. The floor was stained dark where the first hunter had fallen. Smoke still lingered from the burned creature that Sira had blasted into the wall. Outside, the forest was alive with whispers, claws scratching against bark, shadows pacing just beyond the firelight. Daniel stood near the window, reloading his rifle, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp. He could feel the weight of the night pressing on his shoulders, but his hands did not tremble. Survival had always been his way of life. Yet tonight was different. This was not just survival. It was war inside his own home. Behind him, Sira sat weakly on the bed, her glowing marks dim now, fading as though the energy inside her had drained. Her breath was shallow, and her skin was pale beneath the faint silver hue. Daniel glanced at her between his preparations. "You should rest," he said firmly. Sira shook her head slowly. "Rest will not save us. You need answers. If I hide them, you cannot fight what comes." Daniel turned, his rifle across his chest, his eyes narrowing. "Then talk. I've had strangers at my door before, but none of them brought death on their heels. What are those marks? Why do they want you so badly?" For a moment, Sira looked into the fire. The flames reflected in her eyes, making them shine brighter, as if she carried stars inside her. Her hands clutched the torn cloth tighter around her body. Then she spoke, her voice low, heavy with pain. "These marks are not decoration. They are bonds. My people call them the threads of fate. They are given only to chosen bloodlines, those meant to lead the hunt. I was born into it. I was meant to command the hunters, to call them, to send them after prey." But her voice broke slightly. "I refused," Daniel frowned. "Refused what?" Her eyes lifted to his. "Refused the old law. The hunt was not just against beasts. It was against people. Villages, the weak, even our own kind, if they were judged unworthy. I could not order death for those who had done no wrong. So I broke the hunt. I let prey live. And for that they turned on me." Daniel studied her for a long moment. The idea of a society built on endless hunts made his blood run cold. But what struck him most was not the cruelty of her people. It was the strength in her voice when she admitted her defiance. "They stripped me," she continued, touching the edge of her torn cloth. "This is not clothing. It is shame. They cut away my garments and left me with nothing but this. It means I am prey, that I am to be chased until I fall. The hunters you killed, they are not ordinary soldiers. They were once my command, and now they will not stop until my blood runs on the snow." The fire cracked loudly, filling the silence that followed her words. Daniel's grip tightened on the rifle. He looked at her torn cloth, at the bruises on her skin, at the glowing marks that pulsed faintly even now. For the first time since she had knocked on his door, he saw her not as a stranger or a danger, but as someone who had chosen mercy in a world that demanded cruelty. "You did the right thing," Daniel said quietly. Sira blinked, almost startled by the certainty in his tone. "You believe that?" "I don't care what your people say," he answered. "I've lived my life by one rule: protect the innocent even if no one else does. If they want to hunt you for showing mercy, then they're the monsters, not you." Her lips parted as though she wanted to answer, but instead tears welled in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away, shaking her head. "You speak like the stories. Long ago they told tales of humans, dangerous, unpredictable, filled with fire in their blood. They said a human's heart could burn brighter than any weapon. I thought it was only myth, but now I'm looking at one." Daniel gave a small, grim smile. "Myth or not, I'm here. And as long as you're in my home, I won't let them take you." Sira lowered her head, her voice trembling. "Then I must tell you one more truth. My marks, they are not only symbols. They are a beacon. The longer I stay, the brighter they burn. The hunters can track me no matter how far I run. Even now I am drawing them closer to you." Daniel sighed, setting the rifle down for a moment. He crouched in front of her, looking into her wide eyes. "Then we make their mistake bigger. If they're coming here, then here is where we fight. Not just to survive the night, but to end their hunt once and for all." Sira's gaze searched his face as though trying to understand why a man would risk everything for someone he had only just met. Finally, she whispered, "You do not know what that promise means." Daniel straightened, reloading his rifle again. "No, but I know this: if you knock on a human's door and he opens it, he doesn't close it again. That's our way." The wind outside howled like a beast, carrying with it the low growl of the hunters drawing closer. The cabin creaked under the weight of the night. Sira pulled the torn cloth tighter, her glowing marks shining faintly like threads of fire under her skin. She looked at Daniel not with fear this time, but with something different. Trust. And for the first time since the knocking began, Daniel felt it too. A bond, fragile but real, had formed in the shadows of danger. The night was not over, but in that moment they were no longer just prey. They were partners in a fight the hunters would not forget. The final confrontation. The night deepened and the forest no longer sounded like a forest. It growled, hissed, and whispered with unnatural voices. The hunters had drawn closer, circling like wolves around the cabin. The horn had gone silent, now replaced by the sound of claws scraping against wood, slow and deliberate. Daniel stood at the center of the room, his rifle in one hand, his knife in the other. He felt the weight of the coming storm pressing down on him, but his eyes burned with resolve. Sierra stood beside him, her glowing marks flickering faintly, brighter with every sound outside. She looked weaker, but her eyes carried the fire of someone who refused to give in. "They're testing your fear," she whispered. "Once they hear panic, they strike. If we stay calm, it makes them angry." Daniel smirked coldly. "Then let's make them furious." The first attack came without warning. The roof shook as a massive weight landed on it. Claws tore through the wood above, scattering splinters across the room. Daniel raised his rifle and fired at the ceiling. The blast roared, and a screech followed as something fell from the roof, crashing outside. But the moment of victory was short. Two hunters broke through the back wall, ripping through the old timber like paper. They were tall, broad, and their eyes glowed like burning coals. Their mouths opened wide, revealing sharp teeth dripping with venom. Daniel fired again, dropping one with a bullet through the skull, but the second lunged forward with inhuman speed. Its claws slashed across his shoulder, tearing his shirt and drawing blood. Daniel gritted his teeth, slamming the butt of his rifle into its jaw before pulling the knife free. The hunter roared, swinging wildly. Daniel ducked under its strike and drove the blade deep into its side. The alien shrieked, stumbling back, but it wasn't finished. Before it could strike again, a burst of light filled the room. Sierra raised. Her trembling hand and a wave of energy shot forward, throwing the creature against the wall. Smoke rose from its chest where her power had burned it, but the effort nearly collapsed her. She fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her up quickly. "Stay with me." Her voice was weak. "I can't hold much longer." "You don't have to," Daniel said firmly. "Just save it for when I can't." Another crash shook the door, this time harder, splintering the wood. Shadows moved outside, 3, maybe 4 figures circling, waiting for the final push. Daniel's shoulder throbbed with pain, but he tightened his grip on the knife, blood dripping down his arm. The hunters howled together, a chilling chorus that shook the cabin walls. Then they struck. The front door exploded inward, and 3 hunters stormed inside at once. Their claws slashed, their eyes burned, and their growls filled the air. Daniel fired, dropping the first, then swung the rifle like a club, knocking the second back. The third leaped toward him, but Sierra's power flared again, blasting it mid-air and slamming it into the floor. The cabin was chaos, gunshots, claws, firelight, and shadows. Daniel fought like a man possessed, every strike precise, every move, driven by survival and something deeper, the promise he had made to the woman who had knocked on his door. One hunter grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with crushing strength. Daniel's vision blurred as air left his lungs. He stabbed blindly with his knife once, twice, 3 times, until the grip loosened. He fell to the floor, coughing, blood on his lips. But alive, Sierra screamed, her glowing mark suddenly burning brighter than ever before. She raised both hands and a surge of light erupted from her body, filling the cabin like a storm. The hunters screamed as the energy tore through them, their skin burning, their bodies crashing into the walls. The blast threw Daniel back as well, knocking him hard against the table. He shielded his eyes until the glow faded. When he looked again, the room was filled with smoke and silence. The bodies of hunters lay twisted and burned, their green eyes dark now. But Sierra was on the ground, her body limp, her marks fading dim. Daniel crawled to her side, lifting her gently into his arms. Her breath was shallow, her eyes half closed. You used too much," he muttered, his voice breaking. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "It was the only way. They would have killed you." Daniel shook his head. "Don't you dare talk like that. You're not dying here. Not after all this." Outside, the forest was quiet again, the howls silenced. The hunters had been defeated, for now. But Daniel knew more could come. The hunt never stopped. Sierra's hand weakly gripped his arm. Her voice was barely a whisper, but her words carried weight. "You are not like them. You fight for more than survival. That is why they fear humans." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked into her glowing eyes, fading but still full of light. "Then let them fear, because as long as I'm breathing, they won't take you." The fire crackled, the cabin broken but still standing. The hunters lay defeated, but the night was not yet finished. For Daniel and Sierra, the final dawn was still waiting to arrive. Dawn of a new bond. The night had been long, cruel, and filled with blood, but at last the forest grew quiet. The howls of the hunters had faded. Their bodies lay broken around the cabin, and the horn of death no longer echoed in the dark. Only silence remained, heavy and deep, broken only by the soft crackle of the fire. Daniel sat on the floor, his back against the wall, his rifle lying useless beside him. His body ached from wounds and bruises. His shoulder burned where claws had torn his flesh, and his throat still hurt from the grip of the hunter who had tried to crush the life from him. Yet he was alive. Against all odds, he was alive. In his arms lay Sierra. Her glowing marks were faint now, dim like dying embers, but her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Daniel brushed a strand of silver hair from her face, his rough fingers careful, gentle in a way that surprised even him. "You're still here," he whispered, almost as if speaking to himself. "You made it through the night." Her eyes fluttered open slowly, weak, heavy, but still bright. She looked at him for a long time as though searching for something in his face. Then her lips parted. "I thought I would die here, but you didn't let me." Daniel gave a faint smile, though his face was smeared with dirt and blood. "Told you before. You knocked on my door. That makes you my guest. And a human doesn't abandon a guest." A small laugh escaped her, weak but real. "Your kind is dangerous. Not because of your weapons, but because of this." Her trembling hand touched his chest just above his heart. "Because you fight with more than strength. You fight with your soul." Daniel said nothing, but the weight of her words stayed inside him. For years he had lived alone, believing the world beyond his forest did not care if he lived or died. Yet here was someone from beyond the stars, someone who had believed humans were only myths, telling him that his spirit was enough to shake her people's fear. The first light of dawn began to creep through the cracks of the broken cabin. Pale gold spilled across the floor, touching Sierra's face, making her skin glow faintly once more. The hunters were gone, but their threat was not. Daniel knew more could come. But for this moment, they had survived. Sierra's eyes softened as she looked at the broken door, the ruined walls, the shattered glass. "You lost your home because of me," Daniel shook his head. "A home is just wood and stone. It can be built again. What matters is who's inside it." She blinked at his words, her lips trembling. For so long she had carried only shame and fear, cast out by her people, hunted as prey. But now, for the first time, she felt something else. Safety. "A bond, you saved me," she whispered. "In my people's law, that means my life belongs to you now." "I am yours until death," Daniel frowned. "I don't want ownership. I didn't save you to claim you." Her gaze did not waver. "It is not ownership. It is a bond. My people call it the thread of oath. When prey is spared and when a hand is offered in protection, the thread ties them together. You may not want it, but it is already there." "I feel it." Daniel's heart tightened. He looked into her glowing eyes, and for the first time he felt it too. A thread, invisible yet strong, binding their fates together. "Then it's not about me owning you," he said quietly. "It's about us standing together, you and me, against whatever else comes." Tears welled in Sierra's eyes. She nodded slowly, her lips curling into the faintest smile. Together. The sun broke fully through the trees now, casting warm light across the battlefield that had once been his home. The corpses of the hunters smoldered in the early glow, smoke rising into the sky like a warning to whatever waited beyond the stars. Daniel stood, helping Sierra to her feet. She leaned against him, weak but steady, her head resting briefly on his shoulder. Outside, the forest was quiet, as though it too was holding its breath. "What now?" she asked softly. Daniel looked out into the horizon, where the sun painted the world in gold. "Now we rebuild, we prepare, and when they come again..." He tightened his grip on his knife, his voice calm but unyielding. "We make sure they never forget what it means to hunt a human." Sierra closed her eyes, the warmth of the sun on her face, and for the first time since her people had cast her out, she felt hope. The hunt had begun with fear, but it ended with something stronger: trust, courage, and a bond no law could break. And as dawn rose over the forest, two souls, one human, one alien, stood together. No longer hunter and prey, but partners bound by fire, blood, and promise. It was not the end. It was only the beginning.